years. Joining me now is Democratic Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan, one of those red state Democrats who is opposing Judge Gorsuch's nomination. Senator Stabenow, welcome back to the show.
Always good to be with you, Chuck.
Let me start with, give me your rationale. Why will you not bring him to the floor? Why will you not vote to bring his confirmation to the floor for a vote? I get opposing him on issue grounds, but why not give him an up or down vote?
Well, Chuck, first of all, I'm going to take a step back and say that 7 of the 8 current Supreme Court justices had over 60 votes in their process, both with every president from President Clinton, George W. Bush, to President Obama. And so this is about getting a nominee who can get 60 votes. Now, from my perspective, this is someone that has always sided with big institutions, big corporations, big entities. You know the case of the truck driver in Michigan who unfairly was fired. 6 different judges said he was unfairly fired, and then it got to Judge Gorsuch, and he sided with the company when this was a gentleman who was essentially freezing to death in the cold and trying to get some help, or the child who is trying to get special education and their parents are concerned. And the entire Supreme Court today ruled against a standard Judge Gorsuch set up in ruling against the child. So there's case after case after case. So in my book, this is somebody out of the mainstream. We should have a nominee that can get a bipartisan 60-vote threshold. That's really what we said when we were in the majority. We didn't change the rules on the Supreme Court because we felt it should be 60 votes,
Senator,
mainstream majority.
There is nothing written anywhere that says a Supreme Court justice has to be confirmed on a bipartisan vote.
That's true. I think that if you ask the American people, they would say that, though, that in terms of what's good for people. I know in Michigan, if I ask people, what would you like to see, an extreme judge on one end or the other, or somebody that can be mainstream and get bipartisan votes, they want somebody in the mainstream.
Well, as you know, one person's mainstream candidate is another person's extreme candidate for what it's worth these days, the way. But I want to go back to, okay, you have made a case to me why you're not voting for him. I get that. Why not go to the Senate floor, have this debate, maybe fund a campaign to try to convince 3 or 4 Republicans to join you in this, but why not give them an up or down vote?
Because in my perspective, this is to say no, go back to the drawing board. That's what President Trump should be doing, working with the minority leader. That's what Orrin Hatch did with President Clinton to get a mainstream candidate. That's what advice and consent means. We have the capacity to say no, we don't want to bring this person forward. We don't want to close debate. We think they're out of the mainstream. And I'm doing that, and I believe that I'm doing this on behalf of people in Michigan who want somebody who's going to give the little guy a fair shot and just not always be with the big corporation or the big institution.
No, again, I get the case. I get the case you're making against him. I just don't understand the case of not giving him an up or down vote, because this was the complaint Democrats made to Mitch McConnell, who made this decision not to give a qualified Supreme Court nominee a confirmation hearing or up or down vote. Why not give this person an up or down vote?
First of all, Chuck, what we said was, with Merrick Garland, have the courtesy to meet with him, have hearings, do the reviews. And we never even got that far to talk about whether or not there'd be a 60-vote threshold, because they left the court non-functioning for over a year by not even considering a nominee. So to me, that's something completely separate.
But I guess what I'm saying is, do 2 wrongs make a right here, or 3 wrongs, or 4 wrongs, or 5 wrongs? I know.
Chuck, it's not about wrong or right.
Why not give him an up or down vote?
Because I believe that he is wrong for the people of Michigan, and I'm going to use the capacity that I have to say no at every level.
Now, as you know, this is probably going to trigger the so-called nuclear option, and we will no longer have the Senate as America's cooling saucer, essentially.
There's no reason that has to happen. This is Mitch McConnell's decision to make. When the Senate Democrats had that choice to make, we said no, that there should be a 60-vote threshold, so there's a bipartisan vote on the U.S. Supreme Court.
But
so
only on the Supreme Court.
But that's true.
Didn't we go down the road of a slippery slope here when the decision was made by Harry Reid to say, well, you know what, we're tired of the obstruction on the lower courts, so we're going to get rid of this filibuster. It was inevitable that this was going to be the reaction of the other side once they got power, which was the warning many people made to Senator Reid, including, I believe, your former colleague, Carl Levin.
Chuck, what I would say is that we made the decision, conscious decision, thoughtful, debated it in our caucus, that it was better for the country to keep the 60-vote threshold on the highest court in the land, lifetime appointment. And that's something that Mitch McConnell can decide and his caucus can decide as well. For me, the most important thing is having the right person on the bench. It's not about process. I mean, people at home in Michigan aren't looking at process. They're looking at, is this person going to make the right decision? Are they impartial? Do they have the right values? And for me, the answer is no on this particular nominee.
What do you make of the argument that says this? Understand the larger argument you're making, but this is one you may lose, and it's, at the end of the day, ideologically, Gorsuch isn't going to change the makeup of the court if you say, because he's replacing Scalia, and that you save the filibuster fire for a future potential opening.
Well, when you're talking about process, I guess the big question is Mitch McConnell going to do this anyway at any time? I mean, I don't know. He's got to make that decision at this point. What ought to happen is that if you have a nominee that can't get 60 votes, you should change the nominee and not change the rules. That's the bottom line.
One question on President Trump and the rhetoric he's putting out there about reaching out to Democrats. When will you take it seriously?
Well, I've reached out and said I have a Bring Jobs Home Act that I've introduced several times to close loopholes to bring jobs back to America, and said I want to work with you on that. In the past, the Republicans have blocked it, but President Trump is talking as if he supports those things, and I'm willing to work with him. If it's jobs through rebuilding America, if it's fair trade, if it's lowering costs and improving health care instead of taking it away from people, then I'm very happy, and I know colleagues of mine are happy as well to work with him.
Do you feel pressure from the base these days to be a little more skeptical of anything they're offering?
Well, at this point, again, I see everything through the lens of Michigan. We need jobs. We need to lower the costs of prescription drugs and health care and make sure people's health care continues to improve. I mean, I'm going to make decisions based on that. I understand. I'm excited about all of the enthusiasm from people across the country. It's amazing. Frankly, it resulted in what happened on Friday, people speaking out for themselves and their families about not wanting to lose the ability to see a doctor and have medical care. So I love that. Ultimately, for me, it's about what's best for Michigan.
All right. Senator Stabenow, as always, thanks for coming on and sharing your views. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.